Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Christina Rose, Director of Strategic Alliances at Foundation Source, and I will be facilitating today's webinar discussing the positive psychology of family philanthropy. I am pleased to be joined by our esteemed speaker, Joel Treisman, who will share his insights on the connections between philanthropy and family flourishing. He will help walk us through the age-old question, can money make your family happier? A growing body of research suggests that generosity, altruism, and caring for others does promote well-being in families. I will introduce him in a few moments, but first, just wanted to touch base on a few points. For anyone not familiar with our firm, Foundation Source is the nation's largest provider of management solutions for private foundations. We empower people and companies to create a better world with their philanthropy through our suite of administrative support, active compliance monitoring, tax and legal expertise, online foundation management tools, and philanthropic advisory services. We work in concert with financial advisors, attorneys and CPAs, consultants and family offices, individuals, families, and corporations to bring philanthropic visions to life. And as we celebrate our 20th year of service, Foundation Source supports 2,000 foundation clients of all sizes, who together have granted more than $7 billion to charity. Now, I want to make note that the webinar today will total 75 minutes, and concluding at 3:15 Eastern Time, 12:15 Pacific. This is slightly longer than our usual 60-minute webinar, but we wanted to ensure ample time for questions that arise throughout the discussion. If you need to leave the broadcast at the top of the hour, you can still watch the final 15 minutes later on. All attendees will receive a link to the recording via email in the next few days. And now, just a quick word about Wi-Fi and phone connections. Probably like many of you, we are working remotely. So we don't anticipate any technical issues during the broadcast, but if one of us loses connection, just know that we will quickly get it resolved and resume the webinar. And if you experience problems, you can try exiting and then rejoining the broadcast. And you can also try using audio via your phone and on your computer. It will also reduce some strain on your Wi-Fi connection. Questions can be submitted at any time, either via the chat or Q&A features. You can access those icons at the bottom of your screen. And I will pose some questions to Joel throughout the discussion, and then we'll reserve some time, some dedicated time, Q&A at the end. So if we do not have time to answer all of your questions, just please know that we will follow up with you directly after the webinar. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Joel. Joel Treisman is a scholar-practitioner in applied positive psychology and founder of the consulting and coaching firm From Wealth to Wisdom. Through his work with high net worth individuals, families, entrepreneurs, businesses, and not-for-profit organizations, he integrates insights about the psychology of wealth, human flourishing, and family dynamics. He holds a master's degree in applied positive psychology from UPenn, an MBA from the Yale School of Management, and a BA from Stanford University. And if that's not enough, he is currently pursuing a PhD in organizational systems at Saybrook University. Joel, it's an absolute pleasure to have you with us today. And with that, I turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Christy. And I'm thrilled to be here and to have the opportunity to talk about a topic that I find fascinating and I love sharing with everybody all the time, from Uber drivers to people in the line at the grocery store, mask included. What I want to talk about today is the question of money and happiness. And so I'm going to dive in here. I've got a bunch of slides. I will try not to go too quickly. And I do look forward to people asking questions and getting into a dialogue if we have time. So the question is, can money make you happier? And while it's not the only answer, I believe that yes, money can make you happier. And one way is when you give it away. So before we get going, I want to get a sense of the room, so to speak, the Zoom room. And I'm going to ask a few questions of people on the Zoom with us right now. It looks like about 160 or so people so far. So Some of you maybe have used Mentimeter. So hopefully you can see my screen. I'm going to put up a few Mentimeter polls. So the way you use Mentimeter is if you have a phone nearby or on your computer there, go to menti.com, enter the code 3216-0350. The instructions are right at the top of that screen. And I can see some answers popping up, which is wonderful. So we've got people from all over, from Nashville, New York. I should have said I'm sitting here in Westport, Connecticut, and we've got people from all over: LA, Berkeley, Chicago, Utah, Nashville, Washington. Thank you. Please do continue to add your locations. One thing to say that I just want to appreciate is that all of you have done what you needed to do to make time and space to join us today and be involved in this conversation. So as these populate, I don't want to spend too much time on this slide, but I will promise you that when I move ahead, you should be able to continue to add your locations into this question. So we've got people all over. By the way, I have to say a shout out to glamorous New Jersey. So let me ask you another question. We'll move on. You can keep answering that. I'm interested, because I think we have a mix of people here, about your thoughts on the positive impacts of family philanthropy. There are many positives, and I'm going to share some of them. Please use the Menti response to add yours. Joy, happiness, fantastic. Connectedness, cohesion, perspective, togetherness. I love using Mentimeter because you just see all these words populate the screen. Gratitude, giving. Jim asked the question, the Menti code is 3216-0350. I will try to monitor the chat. I'll do my best, and Christy will hopefully answer some of the questions if I don't get to them. I just want to highlight some of the things that I'm seeing here. Be a fountain, not a drain. I look forward to hearing your thoughts on that. Engaging the next generation, we're going to talk about that. Family cohesion, collective voice, empowerment, collaboration, bonding, humility. These are all wonderful answers. Wonderful. We've got about 75 so far, and we'll get everybody else's in the process. If you haven't had a chance to add yours, feel free. If you've got more than one, I think I set this up so you can add a few. And we'll have the summary of all of people's answers after the session. If you're interested, let us know if you want to see where we net out, what we end up with. So this is maybe a little more personal. Giving to nonprofits makes me feel, fill in the blank, please. How does it make you feel when you're giving? Useful, proud, grateful, engaged, accomplished, making a difference, complete. I love that. Thankful, accountable, aware, fortunate, humbled. These are terrific. Invigorated. Yeah, I would agree with that too. Fortunate and generous, connected to a community. Effective. Patriotic. Fantastic. Compassionate, whole, selfless, thinking of others. Thank you, everybody, for sharing. and keep going if you haven't had a chance to enter yours yet. I think there's a little bit of a lag. So if you've entered yours and you don't see it yet, keep going. And we're going to move on. I did want to get a sense of who's joining us live now, what your role is as it relates to family philanthropy. So if I didn't hit your role exactly, please pick the one that's closest. If I have missed a major category, please hit other. And we'll get a sense of who's on with us. And I think that'll be helpful in shaping the conversation. So so far we have a mix of family members, senior generation, rising generation, which is really, I think is a more positive way to refer to next gen. We have some advisors of different sorts, legal, financial, private foundation executives. And clearly I missed a category because we have some people in the other category. So if you want in chat to add what your category is, if you're one of those 5 and climbing people in the other category, please let me know what I missed, and I'll add that for next time. So it looks like we've got a race between the senior generation and the private foundation executives. Terrific. So please keep responding in Menti to that if you haven't had a chance to yet. So in the next slide, I've added a few statements, and I really just want to get a sense of the extent to which you agree or disagree with each of these statements. No judgments, but I want to get a feel. So recipients benefit more from philanthropy than the givers do. Getting the next generation involved in philanthropy. I think I missed something on that, but oh yes, getting the next generation involved in family philanthropy. Yes, philanthropy is too often driven by ego or guilt. And finally, family philanthropy can boost the well-being of the family. I hope the fact that I'm giving this presentation is a clue to the fact that I strongly agree with that. And clearly others agree. And from what I'm seeing here, the vast majority of folks agree that it's a good way to involve the next generation. And we will talk about what drives philanthropy. I want to move on to some of the content. So once again, please keep going on the Menti and add your responses. I'm pretty sure that you can continue to do that while I roll through my slides. Let us know in the chat if by moving on to my slides, I've somehow stopped your Menti responses. I hope not. So what I want to talk about over the course of the next, now it's about an hour, is the idea of positive family philanthropy. Just to round out a little information about me, I am a Foundation Source client and have been for some time. Foundation Source has been helping, this is not an ad, this is just fact. Foundation Source has been helping my family manage the logistics of 2 private foundations, and together our family distributes about $500,000 a year to environmental and arts causes through those foundations, and we feel very fortunate to be able to do so, and fortunate to have Foundation Source helping us do that. I spent about a dozen years working with Tiger 21 as a chair in New York. Tiger 21 is a peer learning organization for high net worth investors. Many of them are first generation wealth creators. What my friend Jim Grubman and Dennis Jaffe would call immigrants to the land of wealth. The next gen they would talk about as natives in the land of wealth. And so I did a deep dive into the world of wealth through my Tiger 21 experiences. I did spend a couple of years on top of my chair duties as the Chief Learning Officer, collecting and disseminating best practices to my peers, the other chairs around North America and even in Europe. I created, while I was a Tiger, a consulting and coaching organization called From Wealth to Wisdom. And I do things like run family meetings, provide coaching on philanthropy, governance, family wealth. I'm overeducated, so much so that I went back to school again after earning a master's in applied positive psychology a couple of years ago. And I'm now a student again, pursuing a doctoral program. I'm a certified coach of individuals and organizations. I'm a very active nonprofit board leader, and I do coaching with nonprofit boards and leaders as well. And I teach. I'm thrilled and fortunate to be on the teaching faculty at UPenn, teaching positive psychology, which is the degree that I earned in 2019, and also will be starting at the University of Buffalo, helping to teach their advanced coaching certificate program. And the picture on the right is sort of a summary of where we're going and what I believe after all of my time, both family experience and with Tiger 21, that money conversations and decisions are always surrounded by the context of emotion. And I wanted to make sure that people keep that in mind as we go through this. It's very difficult to tease those apart. It's a little bit of the tip of the iceberg and what lies below. I mentioned positive psychology. Some of you may have heard of Marty Seligman, who's acknowledged to be the father of positive psychology. About 20 years ago, he created this field when he was or at least the modern version of the field, when he was heading the American Psychological Association. And he challenged his peers, psychologists, to look into what it actually meant to have well-being and how to boost well-being. And he said that the skills of becoming happy turn out to be almost entirely different from the skills of not being sad, not being anxious, not being angry. So when you think about so much of psychology in the past, it was focused on getting somebody from a -8 to a -4 in their well-being. And Marty's question was, how do you get somebody who's already a 4 in well-being up to an 8? Maybe there are different, what psychologists call interventions. Maybe there are different tools and ways to achieve that that are different from the way psychology has been looked at in the past. I was very interested during my time at Penn in exploring the idea of family flourishing. This is a poster that I created and presented based on my capstone project, which was a deep dive into family flourishing, how to define it, how to measure it. So I created this dashboard of family flourishing, and I'm happy to share, if you're interested, happy to share more about that with you. But it was a deep dive into the research and in the creation of this concept of a dashboard that would be helpful both for practitioners like me, but also for my clients, individuals and families. So my interest in going back to Penn stemmed from my Tiger 21 and my family experience. And I wanted to explore what I started calling the 3 Fs of family, flourishing, and finance. How are money and well-being related? Is there some equation where money plus something else equals happiness? And so those 3 Fs are the foundation and the understructure of what I'm going to talk about over the rest of this session. So just a little bit of defining of terms, if you will, from the science of well-being. Positive psychology, Chris Peterson, some of you may have heard his name. He talks about that as the scientific study of what makes life most worth living. Happiness, and the reason I'm putting these in here is that they are subtly different, and I wanted to tease out some of the differences. So happiness is the experience of joy and contentment, positive well-being, and it also includes the sense that one's life is going well, that it's meaningful and worthwhile. Some of you have heard of and maybe seen and read Sonia Lubomirsky. Subjective well-being is this concept of experiencing pleasant emotions, low negative moods, high life satisfaction. Subjective meaning that it is self-reported. And the idea of flourishing, which is less oriented around mood and momentary feelings, it's more related to beyond oneself, to improving one's community and having a sense of longer term growth and well-being. I want to introduce you to Marty Seligman's PERMA theory of well-being. And this is out there. If you want to Google it, there's plenty of information out there. If you want to look at his book, Flourish, you can read more about that. Marty's structure, Marty's framework consists of positive emotions, engagement. Some of you have heard of flow. That's a form of engagement, positive relationships, a sense of meaning, and a sense of accomplishment and achievement. So each of these has been researched both independently and together. And in fact, if you go to the AuthenticHappiness.com website, which is a University of Pennsylvania research website, you can take the PERMA questionnaire as well as a whole slew of other well-being related questionnaires. The faculty and researchers use responses anonymously as part of their research efforts, and you can learn what your PERMA is. I will tell you, when I check in with my friends and colleagues from Penn, we often start with not how are you doing, but tell me about your PERMA. Thinking about well-being, and by the way, thinking about well-being includes each of these elements, but also newer research includes another element, which some people call V for vitality or H for health. I'd be interested if you think there's something else missing in this. One of the other pillars of the positive psychology world has to do with character strengths. Positive psychology is very much oriented around building on strengths, not to say that people don't have weaknesses, but building on strengths is a core idea. Strengths being those positive parts of your personality that make you feel engaged and authentic and motivated. They identified 24 strengths in all that cross race, gender, nationality, ethnicity, and you can go to, I put down on the bottom right there, viacharacter.org to learn about your strengths. And the research that has been done by the Via Character Institute has shown through a number of studies that understanding and applying your strengths is a way to boost confidence, increase your happiness. It strengthens relationships. It helps you manage problems and reduce stress. It helps you focus on and be more effective in pursuing your goals. It builds meaning and purpose, and it improves your performance in work context. All of those are backed up by multiple research studies. I want to take a slight detour from the topic of philanthropy and talk about what I learned briefly about money and happiness through my studies of the science of well-being in positive psychology. I have bookshelves, some of which you see behind me, filled with psychology books, wealth-related books, family wealth-related books. And in one way or another, many of these are oriented around this question, this equation: money plus what equals happiness? And I'm sure you'll see some familiar names and authors here. So this is a topic of fascination for me and for a lot of other people, I'm sure all of you. So as I dove into that question, I began to see a difference between the idea of financial well-being, and many of you advisors may talk about financial well-being with your clients, which is this feeling that you have enough money to meet your needs, you're in control of your day-to-day financial picture, you're protected against financial shocks, you're heading towards achieving your financial goals, and ultimately you have some financial freedom and you can make your life enhancing choices. I expanded upon that as I learned about positive psychology, because I think this concept can be broader, and that is the concept of financial wellness, which encompasses not just your financial health, but other aspects of your human and psychological well-being. So the bottom line is that boosting your financial wellness is more than just boosting your financial well-being. And I'd love to hear from you. Having spoken to a lot of financial and other advisors, I think there is a realization of this being true and a real interest in broadening their skills and knowledge to talk about financial wellness. So the research has shown that with money, it's not just how much you have that matters. So having more money doesn't necessarily enhance your well-being and your happiness. While it does so up to a point, research has shown, as it does in so many things in life, that there is a inverted U curve, that you can reach the top of that curve and go beyond the maximum happiness that money provides and actually have more money, earn more money, have a higher net worth, and actually have reduced happiness and well-being. It turns out that how you use what you have and the way you view it and act on it is what really matters. And some of you've seen the study, and I'm happy to share the research that $75,000 is this optimal point in terms of annual income. And above that, it's not that it turns into a U, but the impact of earning more lessens over time. There's newer research into this that shows that that's sort of an old number, that it's been updated in terms of your net worth. And it also matters how you've made your money, whether this is inherited money, whether it's income from investments. So it's a more complicated picture than I'm really painting at the moment in the interest of time. But here are some things to keep in mind from the world of positive psychology in terms of financial wellness. Some of these may or may not be surprising to you. Having a sense of control, or what psychologists call self-efficacy, turns out to be very important. Taking control of your financial behavior is one way to boost your financial wellness. Psychologists talk about social comparison. Comparing ourselves to others, whether it's financially or otherwise, is a sure way to reduce your own satisfaction with your life. The idea of keeping up with the Joneses is something that everybody has heard before. By the way, a lot of the pictures you've seen or will see are mine. Take pictures of Rolls Royces, for instance. The idea of finding meaning and purpose in life. So pursuing your passions. The Japanese have an interesting term for this, ikigai, which is the intersection of what you're good at, what you love, what the world needs, and what you get paid for. And in this graphic, you'll see that these overlap. You can have a passion for what you love and what you're good at. You can feel a sense of mission when you combine what the world needs with what you love. Your vocation is a function of what you get paid for and what the world needs. And you can have a profession that's built on your skills and what you get paid for. So each of those overlaps of the two circles is missing something, according to this way of looking at things. And the ikigai is that intersection, that sweet spot right in the middle. Gratitude, there's a lot of research from positive psychology about the benefit in terms of well-being, on practicing gratitude, on savoring what you have, on appreciating the good in your life. It literally rewires the brain, practicing gratitude. There's some wonderful gratitude exercises I'd be happy to share. Some people keep gratitude journals. Some of you may have heard of the idea of a gratitude letter, which has been shown when you write a gratitude letter and you deliver it in person and read it to the person to whom you feel grateful, that the boost in your well-being is the longest lasting. This is an intervention that produces very long lasting well-being. And it's both for the recipient and the person who delivers that gratitude letter. So it rewires the brain, it creates feelings of contentment, boosts well-being. You may or may not have heard of the Greek term eudaimonic well-being. It's distinguished from the idea of hedonic well-being. You may know the term hedonism. So eudaimonic is connected and derived from the word in Greek that means virtue. So it's the happiness that is derived from knowing your purpose, having meaning in life, being your best self. And that's different from your hedonic well-being, which is often built around consumption and stuff. And the fact is that science has shown that we adapt to boosts in hedonic well-being. You know, you get that new car, after a little while, it's just the car that you use to drive to work. You move from the smaller house to the bigger house. You know, it's just a house after a while. So positive psychology has found that you can boost your happiness if you step off that treadmill. After all, what is a treadmill? It's something that you're moving on without moving forward. You're exerting energy, but going nowhere. And that's said by somebody who loves to ride a Peloton bike. So when you think about this cycle, which is you desire something, you strive for it, you obtain it, you enjoy it, and then as you have this adaptation, you want something new to replace that. And it is a never-ending cycle. And well-being is boosted when you recognize that and step off of that. Barry Schwartz, who wrote The Paradox of Choice, talks about satisficing and maximizing. And it turns out that having lots of choices and spending time trying to maximize everything in your life, having the best job and the nicest stuff and the best of everything produces negative feelings. And learning to be happier by satisficing, recognizing that it's okay if I don't spend hours and hours getting the best thing or investing in something that is marginally better, you will be happier. So satisficing is one of the first things we talk about in UPenn's positive psych program. Research shows over and over again that when you invest your money in buying time and freedom, in investing it in health and vitality, investing in exercise and health-related pursuits, it promotes happiness. Likewise, spending your money on experiences rather than stuff is more effective at boosting well-being. And yep, that's me in Jackson Hole enjoying an experience, which was fun and scary. So memorable experiences produce longer boosts in well-being, according to the research. So something to keep in mind, and we'll come back to it in the course of the holiday season. Finally, and circling back to the topic that brought us here, generosity. Being generous with your money and your time, spending on others has been shown to make us happier than spending money on ourselves. So back to that equation, if money plus something equals happiness, could giving be that missing variable? Is that the X factor? Winston Churchill said, "We make a living by what we get, we make a life by what we give." And from your answers earlier on in the session, I think most of you will agree with that. So where I originally began my questioning back in the beginning of my positive psych studies about the relationship between money and well-being, I've also looked into what's the connection between philanthropy and well-being, which is really the overlap of wealth psychology and applied positive psychology. And so I refer to this as positive family philanthropy. What is philanthropy? The concept has changed over time from this love of humanity all the way to goodness, the Aristotelian concept of virtue, and the habits of good behavior, love of mankind, back to love of humanity again. So in the Webster Dictionary, the meaning of philanthropy is the practice of giving money and time to help make life better for other people. I think there are people who would argue that that is a very narrow perspective, and I urge you to think about what philanthropy means to you. I will share in my own inheritance, if you will, there's a multi-generational legacy of service and giving, and I suspect that may be true for many on the Zoom at the moment. So I'm fortunate, a lot of my family members have written autobiographies, and in each of them, there's this thread of giving back in some way. My grandfather's grandmother, Granny Wolf, wrote in her 1939 autobiography about how she was given an allowance of $5 a month for spending, and she was supposed to, buy her gloves at $2.50 a pair, and she had an account book, and she had to buy her hair ribbons and candy and soda and everything, and she had to give money to charity, all out of her allowance. And maybe that was 5 or 10 cents, but that was something that was instilled in her and me at an early age, and something. I have 3 daughters, and I'm trying to do the same with them. And it's a part of the inheritance that we leave to our kids. And you'll see a couple of other family members who've written about their philosophies. My great uncle, Lewis, who wrote about the art of making and giving money away, and my grandfather, who talked about his luck and in his success.
Sorry,
yes.
I'm going to jump in because I did have a couple of questions, and I think they tie in really well to what you were talking about from your personal experience with your family. So the question came through is there an amount of money that you would give, and when does the happiness kind of take over? When does that happen? Is it relative to the amount that you give? And are there similar positive trends when one gives their time rather than or in addition to their money?
So the answer to the second one is yes. And I have a couple of slides on that I'll talk about giving of your time. The research into volunteering and helping others with time is very clear that does boost happiness. And then one of the trends in positive family philanthropy is combining giving time and doing more than writing that check. As to the amount, I don't have that research at my fingertips. I think I would speculate that the research will show that regardless of how much, when it's meaningful, the results are the same, whether you're giving a little or a lot. But it may also be that there's a relativity between your net worth, your income, and how much you give. So okay. I'm happy to do a dive into the research and answer that with the benefit of others' scientific explorations.
Okay, great. And then I have one other question that came through. And, if this is something you will be discussing, then just let us know and we'll move on. But it was a really good question about if there are differences that you see between generations in what makes one happy, especially when one generation has generated wealth and the subsequent generation has inherited that wealth. So I'll leave that to you and go off camera.
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, I would, a little shout out to the folks at 2164, Sharna Goldsecker and her organization, who have done quite a bit of research. I have a couple slides on, I put up a couple of findings from their research into next gen research, so next gen giving. So I think that there are differences in generations, and that is one reason why one of the best practices with positive family philanthropy is engaging the rising generation, because there are different perspectives. And I know I've had some personal conversations with people who in the senior generation who are a little bit taken aback at their next gen children who feel uncomfortable with their inheritance. So there is a difference in the wealth creator or immigrant mentality and the next gen, the native mentality with inheritance. And by the way, another shout out to Kristen Keffler, who is another fellow UPenn MAP alum who's done a lot of work on the rising generation and their attitudes towards inheritance. So there's a lot of great work out there, and I'm happy to connect people with the research and other experts. I want to share a little bit about some of the research on the mechanisms that drive giving. So this is what people are interested in. I'm a fundraiser. I'm asking for money as well as giving it away, and so I'm interested in knowing what drives people to give. And there are 8 in this literature search that was done. It's about 10 years ago, but I thought interesting. Awareness of the need, being solicited. People often say, if you don't ask, you're not going to get. So being solicited, and an awareness of the costs and benefits of being a philanthropist, of giving. What do I get? What's it going to cost me to give? People give from a sense of altruism. People give to boost their reputation, whether that means naming opportunities or just respect in a community. Psychological benefits, I think, is the closest to what I'm talking about in terms of the well-being and the positive psychology. And even that, there was some discussion about, what is this warm glow and this joy of giving that people receive as philanthropists. And some of this is boosts to their self-image, seeing themselves in a certain way as altruistic, boosting their self-esteem. People give based on their values. People give based on efficacy, meaning, they'll give to organizations that make a difference. I heard years ago, fundraising consultants say that people give to organizations that either save lives or change lives. And we in the organizations I'm involved in talk about that a lot. But for me, what was missing from this is this idea about family. What about family? What about well-being and happiness? That doesn't really show through in the reasons, the mechanisms that drive giving. Back to this question of, and this is 2164 data, but who influences giving? Well, it turns out, and this didn't really come out of that literature search, parents and grandparents. Followed by close friends and peers, but parents and grandparents are incredibly influential. Those of you who are parents or grandparents may not fully appreciate how much influence you have. And how does that happen? That happens through observations. It happens through teaching and learning directly about philanthropy. So it's who you are and what you do and how you pass on those lessons. Some of you may know Catherine Lawrence. She also works at Morgan Stanley. She runs the Cynthia and George Mitchell Foundation. In a relatively recent interview, this stuck out for me. She talks about how normal philanthropy was in her house growing up. It was something that was just a daily thing. It was never really talked about. It was just lived. So, think about the immersion in a family setting where philanthropy is just a part of regular daily life, and I'd say that was true for me as well. I do want to mention, and I don't have a slide for it, but a really interesting study was done of the Giving Pledge participants. An analysis of almost 190 letters, public letters of people who signed up for the Giving Pledge, and what those participants said were their reasons for giving. And interestingly enough, the top 4 were making a difference and having an impact, number 1, gratitude towards others, personal gratification, and family upbringing. And then there were some others that followed. But I thought that was interesting to hear. I think it does fit with the earlier slide. just in terms of family inheritance, just a personal anecdote. I'm descended from one of the early Sephardic Jewish settlers to arrive in the New World, in the colony of New York in the late 1600s, Louis Moses Gomez. And not too long ago, when I was preparing for this talk, I was talking to my 3 daughters, and I asked them, what do you think is the positive psychology of giving? And so what you see here is a reduced image of something that I've got on my wall, which is a family tree that goes back to the late 1600s. I'm not even on, my generation is not even on this image. We're a few generations below it. But one of my daughters said, philanthropy is doing something, not just talking about it. And I was reminded of one of the family crests that I had seen on this family tree, which I marched my daughters over to look at on the wall. And it's the Latin term facta non verba, which is translated loosely means actions speak louder than words. And I just thought that was really compelling and really cool for me to be able to say, look, this has been part of our multi-generational family history and lineage. So a little personal anecdote. So back to the research. It's very clear, giving promotes well-being. There are multiple research studies that show in quantitative terms how this is true, but in general, happier people tend to give more. And because it's a circle, if you think about it as an upward spiral, giving makes people happier. Generosity tends to reduce your risk of dying. Somebody asked about volunteering. People who volunteered in the last year feel healthier, report improved moods, reduced stress. And then across countries, people who donate to charities in the prior month report a greater feeling of satisfaction with their life. And then this idea of social connection, that spending on others makes you feel closer to other people, more connected to humanity. There are a myriad of studies showing that. Another concept I wanted to introduce people is Barbara Fredrickson's broaden and build theory, which I think ties in well with philanthropy. It is, and actually is sort of built on in positive psychology. She's I believe a evolutionary psychologist. She looked into what is the evolutionary value to us of having positive emotions. Negative emotions clearly helped us survive as a race. The humans, negative emotion tends to narrow our focus. We all know about the fight or flight response to fear and danger. You can see how, from an evolutionary standpoint, having negative emotions allowed us to survive. And she asked the question, well, so what's the evolutionary value of positive emotion? And in her research in building this theory, she found that positive emotions broaden our attention and our thinking, tend to undo negative emotional arousal, make us more resilient, build our resources, trigger upward spirals in well-being, and help us flourish. And so if you look at the diagram to the right, it's another upward spiral. Positive emotions broaden. We have new thoughts, new activities, new relationships that helps us build enduring personal resources, which enhances our health, our survival, produces new experiences, and it's a feedback loop that builds. So she refers to that as broaden and build. And I hope that that the connection to philanthropy is evident. Somebody that is evident to is Mackenzie Scott. And I'd send you to a couple of essays she wrote recently on medium.com, one just a week or so ago, where she talks about generosity, engaging the same pleasure centers in the brain as sex, food, receiving gifts, and that it improves our health and long-term happiness. I wish you were on the Zoom with us, and she could talk about from her perspective how that's true. But she says, just as spending in the store triggers a long chain of spending outside the store, kindness in one and unexpected hour of free snow shoveling for a sick neighbor triggers a domino effect. It's a contagion, if you will, of gratitude and gratification inspired kindness. So one of the things that positive psychology has found is that emotions are contagious, positive and negative. So you could imagine how philanthropy produces and volunteering and helping others produces positive effects that spread in a viral kind of a way. So on the topic of doing things and volunteering, the research shows, just like giving, doing things for other people, it boosts our happiness and others' happiness. It helps us feel more satisfied with our lives, provides a sense of meaning, increases competence, improves mood, takes our minds off our troubles, connects us to others. It connects our own happiness to that of the community. And as I said, it's contagious. I will point out, because we do have a number of advisors on the Zoom, and I want to give everybody credit who is already aware of this. If you think about what some people are calling Wealth 3.0, and I had a long conversation with Jim Grubman about this idea that people who are assisting families of wealth, the ultra high net worth families, have come to the realization over time that the advisory world needs to have certain areas of knowledge and competence. Yes, law, yes, finance and business, but also psychology, behavioral science, health, understanding things like financial literacy and wealth in the context of relationships, people's money personalities. So kudos to the advisors who are delving into this and building their knowledge. Similarly, if you're not familiar with the Ultra High Net Worth Institute, there are 10 domains of family wealth, which are on this chart here. This is a nonprofit thought leadership organization, and they've identified these 3 themes of family wealth: human advancement, wealth creation and stewardship, and cultivation of family capital. I would argue that what we're talking about in terms of positive family philanthropy actually spans fully half of those 10 domains, from social impact and philanthropy specifically to health and well-being, the dynamics within a family, learning and development of the rising generation, and even leadership and transition planning. And if you go to their website, you'll see the work that they're doing, which is interesting. I will say, a lot of the advisory work, and I've used this slide in talking to prospective clients over the years, has used what I think is a scary statistic. So sort of motivated high net worth families to talk about philanthropy, to talk about money in their families. From a fear perspective, in the case of what undermines successful transfers of wealth, and in this case, this fairly dated number of 60% of the factors undermining transfers of wealth come down to communication and trust breakdowns. I'm not sure this is true. And I think it's incumbent upon all of us who are advising families to be aware that we can approach this from a positive perspective, talking about strengths, talking about PERMA, talking about broadening and build theory and the connection to wealth, not in a negative scare kind of a tactic. So summing up, what is positive philanthropy? It asks, how will our philanthropy boost our family's PERMA? Remember Seligman's well-being construct. Positive philanthropy appreciates and leverages individual and family character strengths. It broadens and builds the resources of the family. It's driven forward by and represents a family shared sense of purpose and meaning. Remember the Ikigai. It promotes family financial wellness, not just well-being. It collaborates, it rests on collaboration and multi-generational decision-making. It is not top senior generation driven only, but encourages and involves the rising generations' wants and needs and perspectives. It involves an intrinsic motivation to do good and to feel good in the process, rather than giving from fear or guilt or ego. Psychologists talk about approach goals versus avoidance goals. It's not philanthropy to get away from something, to give money away from feeling uncomfortable, but it's giving from the perspective of what you want to achieve in your family as well as among the beneficiaries of your giving. Philanthropy experiences that tie in volunteerism, time invested, thought, connecting with people, as opposed to having a distribution mentality, the writing a check mentality of philanthropy. And it measures impact and benefits to the family. When you think about metrics, it's not just about the efficacy and the impact of the dollars you give, but how does that come back to the family? How does that benefit family cohesion and family well-being? And as I mentioned, it combines the volunteering and the financial giving. Both of those have been shown to benefit the family's well-being. I want to share very briefly some tools and activities. This is by no means a complete list, and I'll invite you to share yours because I know I've only hit the very surface. I put this together a year or so ago. It's a cute mnemonic device spelling out money, M-O-N-E-Y, as we approach the holiday season and thinking about financial wellness. We know money can buy happiness, but spending it in the right ways. So when you think about your holiday shopping, think about how to make the most of your money. So what does that look like? The M has to do with meaning. Can you buy a more meaningful gift? Maybe you can help somebody pursue a passion. Maybe it's an experience, which is also ties into E, but maybe it's something that has special individual meaning for somebody and moves them forward in their pursuit of ikigai. How can you invest in others? Can you be generous person to person? Can you invest your time as opposed to spending money on yourself in this season? Notice what you're grateful for. Gratitude, share your gratitude with people. Can you find ways to gift to others that say thank you, who's been helpful and special to you? Once again, experiences are more effective in boosting well-being. Can you gift an experience to somebody that they will remember? Those memories and savoring them, it turns out, are incredibly helpful in boosting well-being. And savoring, by the way, takes place in three temporal modes. One is anticipating something, one is the savoring of the moment, and the third is savoring by remembering what's happened. So thinking about what people will savor from an experience you can gift them. And then I talked about social comparison. Give your way. There's no need to compare yourself to others. You don't have to give a nicer, more expensive, fancier gift. Enjoy the giving, whatever that looks like for you. Another tool, remember character strengths. You can go to viacharacter.org. You can learn your own character strengths. You'll get back. There's a free version. You can also pay the $40, which I recommend to get a more detailed report. Find out your own character strengths. Find out the strengths of your family members. There's even a version of the questionnaire for, I think, kids under 18 or 16. Find out your whole family's strengths and post them on a door, on the refrigerator. Look for opportunities to point out and praise your family members when they're using their character strengths. Think about when you overuse your strengths and when you underuse your strengths. Instead of weaknesses, sometimes we overuse our strengths to our own detriment. Think about and celebrate your family's character strengths. What do you have in common? And which strengths might be unique to your family members? And then think about that in the context of philanthropy. How can we use our family strengths to be more engaged, more effective, more meaning-driven philanthropists? Another tool I mentioned, 2164. They have some cool tools. They have electronic versions of these you can download on digital form. They have these motivational values sorting cards. They have ways to, they call them giving cards, which give you questions that you might use for dinner table conversation, both valuable tools. You might also want to take a look at the National Center for Family Philanthropy's Purpose Primer. That's downloadable in PDF form for free. And it gives you some context and structure for having a conversation to build a shared sense of the family's philanthropic purpose. And I'm sorry, I'm zipping along here. Just a personal tool or game in my family a few years ago. I went out and I got 5 stacks of $100 bills. So you can get them stacked up and bound from the bank. And my 3 daughters and two of their friends joined us for Thanksgiving. I had each of them, they didn't know this was coming. I brought them into another room. I gave each of them a stack of $100 bills. And I asked each of them to come up with a short list of charitable causes or organizations and to give us a brief pitch on why everybody should support that cause or that organization. I wrote down each of these on a card. We spread the cards out on the ground, and then each of the kids who ranged at that point, I guess, from 13 to 22, had the opportunity to allocate their $100, which is what you see them doing on the floor right now, trying to figure out, do I want to give my full $100 to this one or spread them out? And it was really cool to see how their thinking shifted and where they allocated their dollars. And then as a surprise at the end, I told them I was going to double and match whatever they had allocated to each organization. And another activity, and we're nearing the end here, is hold regular family meetings. I can't stress enough. This is something we talked about in Tiger 21 meetings all the time. The power of pulling your family together regularly to talk about not just philanthropy, but to talk about governance issues, estate planning, your family's financial picture, your family values, the emotional and psychological aspects of well-being. And a best practice is to engage somebody who can facilitate and coach the family as an objective process leader, but you can also do that on your own. I'll throw in food for thought, a book that I've enjoyed and use in a variety of settings, This Art of Gathering by Priya Parker, who gives you some ways to think in an intentional way about gathering. If you have other tools, I invite you, and activities for that matter, I invite you, send them my way. This is my phone number, and we'll share this again afterwards, but my phone number, my email, I'm open to all forms of contact and love to continue the dialogue with you. I want to do 2 quick Mentimeter polls to close things out. So if you wouldn't mind, I'd really appreciate if you could share one word or brief phrase that describes on Mentimeter. Once again, go back to menti.com and enter this code 32160350 and tell us what your takeaway from this webinar is. Did you learn something that you take away? Maybe you'll be able to use it, maybe even today. I'm glad it was reassuring and a reframing process. Happy to be enlightening, and I'm blushing that somebody described it as brilliant. Thank you. Complex, broadening and building. Contact information is from Wealth to Wisdom at Treisman, TREISMAN.com. So please continue to add in your takeaways here. Last question is, just on the slider scale, 1 to 5, how much did you learn today? Many of you may have already known a lot of this. Many of you may have learned something. And then thinking about what you learned, how helpful was it? And are you interested in more? And if you are interested in more, learning more about this, both Foundation Source folks and I will be happy to share with you this presentation, of course, and other resources that you find interesting and that you think might be helpful, whether it's in your own family meetings. For those of you who are advisors, if you think some of this would be helpful in your conversations with clients, I'm happy to have a conversation with you and be a resource in helping you raise the level of those conversations. Once again, we'll share the slides with you, and if you're interested in particular deeper dive in the research, by all means, I'm here to be a resource for you. And please continue to share the feedback within Menti. And arigato, grazie, merci, thank you, gracias. Thank you for your time and your interest. And I think we have a few extra minutes and some time to get into discussion.
We do. Thank you so much, Joel. This has been.
Would it be helpful for me to stop the share so that so we're looking at faces?
Go ahead and do that. What we'll do. We've shared your contact information in our in the chat function. I'm also going to let you know Foundation Source's contact information. We'll also put that in the chat section, and then we'll dive into a few questions that did come over. So to reach out to Foundation Source, it's info@foundationsource.com, or our phone number is 800-839-0054. You can also reach out to me directly if you have any questions. I'm C Rose, ROSE, @foundationsource.com. So, we had a handful of very interesting, and I apologize, it's like this winter daylight, all of a sudden I went from full sun on my face to now it looks like I'm in the cover of darkness. But we had some really great questions that came over, and I'm going to start with a couple of the more provocative ones, because they were where you kind of ended off, which was family engagement. And so I'm going to throw out these two questions because I think they're related and you can answer them in whichever order. The first is, how do you handle family conflicts over giving? Where to give, how much, different financial circumstances between the members. And then kind of related to that is, how do you manage conflicting philanthropic goals between the generations?
Yeah. Well, communication about money, whether it's philanthropy or money, is hard. And I had a whole bunch of other slides in my appendix, which show the difficulty of talking about money and how taboo it is in our culture, and that conflict is a part of that, and people shy away with that from that with sometimes dire circumstances because it's uncomfortable. So I have a couple of answers to that. One is, if you start with strengths, you often can disarm some of that conflict when you may have a difference of opinion and you understand that one of your kids has a strength of perseverance. I don't know, I'm just trying to think of something, or judgment, or honesty, and they may be overusing that honesty, or judgment in your own approach to that conversation, realizing, I can use my strength of curiosity not to react to this, but to really dig deeper and understand where is my son or daughter coming from. Related to that is so acknowledging strengths as opposed to looking at differences, looking at gaps, finding areas where you do agree. And another area in positive psychology is focused on what they call appreciative inquiry, which is building from commonality. It's inquiring with the intent to find areas of agreement, to find the right as opposed to the wrong. So, we all tend to get backed into the corner and argue as if we're trying, we're going to try to convince somebody else of our rightness and their wrongness. But I would encourage people to look for the overlap, look for the areas to collaborate, and then use the tools, use the value sorts, use the primer to look for the family strengths and the shared family vision.
I'm glad you highlighted that the over and the under for character strengths, because that was one of the things that I kind of personally resonated with me that you said. And, you also talked about this engaging the family and the younger generation, and it reminded me of kind of the next iteration of that is the grant certificates that Foundation Source clients can extend to their grandchildren as they're just learning, so they can get on together and start researching charities, things like that. So, to be able to kind of scaffold up and having a starting point, not assuming that that their knowledge base is going to be pretty well developed. So I think that's, building out that positive structuring of understanding.
Yeah, I also just wanted to add that truthfulness is cannot be underrated. I think a lot of people shy away from revealing elements of their financial picture and their philanthropy because they think that their kids are going to take that and use it in a way, or see it in a way that's counterproductive. And we live in a time where you can get all kinds of information on anybody. You want to see how much somebody's house is worth. Zillow is out there. You want to see their political contributions. It's public record. You want to find out contributions. You might find that in the nonprofit's annual report. So being clear, I'll never forget one of the Tiger 21 members in a group meeting, very wealthy family, very understated. You would never know from the way they live their lives that the degree of their wealth. And this guy's daughter was getting married, and someone said, "What have you told your daughter and future son-in-law about the family's wealth?" And he said, "Well, truthfully, they saw what we sold the company for. It was a public company. They sold the holdings, was in the newspapers." He said, "Truthfully, I told them we lost most of it in 2008. And there was silence in the room as people processed that, and then broached gently the topic that this guy and his wife had been, untruthful with their kids. And it was to the kids' detriment. And to their relationships detriment, that they said, "Well, what if you get hit by a bus tomorrow?" Or when they find out, aren't they going to be upset that you've lied to them? And on a positive note, doesn't this give you an opportunity to educate them and to prepare them and to engage them in conversation? Anyway, long story short, they did, as many people do, use philanthropy and their family foundation as a way to educate and prepare and begin to share, the context of wealth and their generosity. And I think it was a wake-up moment for a lot of people.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And we see it a lot. Our philanthropic advisory team, they're doing a lot of that work when suddenly it, you never want to feel like family philanthropy is a burden, and that the wealth is a shock. That they, the next generation is prepared to lead and see the family legacy through. So we certainly see that. There was one other question that came through on finding resources to the next gen family philanthropy. And I'd say there's two things. One, Foundation Source, we have resources on our website. Joel is also a resource to you. We've shared our information mutually in the chat function. Please feel free to reach out to us. And I would say, if you are a Foundation Source client, reach out to your private client advisor. They can help you with, the grant certificates, getting this next gen family philanthropy resources. We're always here to help guide you to any education that, that is helpful to you. We're in our last minute here. There are a couple questions we didn't have a chance to get to, but since the light keeps fading on in my room here, I guess that's the hook that we're given to move on. So I'll just say that, to you, Joel, extend a thank you for your time and talent, and it was truly an insightful discussion. Just to let everyone know, yes, in the next couple of days, we will be sending out a recording of the webinar to everyone who not only attended, but did register for the presentation. And Joel has been kind enough to let us share the slides as well.
Please do finish the Menti responses if you hadn't had a chance to. I think that's open for a few more days. So if you didn't get around to it, I'd love to hear everybody's responses. Great,
thank you. And just lastly, we'll give the contact information one more time for Foundation Source. It's info@foundationsource.com, 800-839-0054. To reach Joel, it's fromwealth2wisdom@treisman.com. That's TREISMAN.com. And the business phone is 203-220-6541. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And this concludes our presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.